Welcome to the... Okay, it's fine. Welcome to the second episode of the first annual Indie Hybrid Author Panel. If you haven't watched the first episode, it's amazing, and the link is in the description below. I'm your moderator, Rivy Israel, and of course, we have the owner of the channel, our hostess, and my mother, Terri Gillespie. As moderator, I'll also keep time to ensure everyone is able to contribute. All right. Let's introduce our panelists. First up, we have Melony Brown. Melony is an award-winning author, speaker, and host of the Challenges Won't Stop Me podcast. Her book, Challenges Won't Stop Me, an interactive survival guide for overcoming and thriving, is a Best Book Award finalist and SELA Award finalist, and a National Indie Excellence Award winner. Her second book, Keep Moving Forward, released last month and is the second half of the interactive survival guide for overcoming and thriving. Despite decades of neurological issues and brain surgery, she continues to move forward to encourage others to fight and overcome too. Melony and her husband Jeff are native Atlantans and love hiking in the North Georgia mountains with their Labradoodle, Willow. Hi, Melony. Next up, we have Cynthia L. Simmons. After raising and homeschooling all 5 of her children, Cynthia is now an award-winning author, radio host, speaker, nurse, and mentor mom. Cynthia provides today's moms with chunks of godly wisdom. You will find her on Heart of the Matter Radio every Thursday and encouragement every Friday, #MomLife. She stays busy writing novels, curricula, Bible studies, plus she speaks nationwide at homeschool conferences and more. Her prize novels, the Gold series, features Pursuing Gold, Reflecting Gold, and Valuing Gold, which all depict her love of history and storytelling. Her latest book, A Penny Saved, was co-written with Terri Gillespie. Hi, Cynthia. And last, but certainly not least, we've got Terri Gillespie. Terri is an award-winning author, reviewer, blogger, YouTube personality, and speaker. Terri loves writing stories and devotionals that speak to the power of the Father's redemptive love and healing. She has written 6 books, including Really Bad Hair Day, winner of the 2022 Golden Scroll for Contemporary Fiction Novel of the Year. Hi, Terri. All right. It's great to have you all here. By the way, viewers, we have all of the authors' websites in the description section below, so you can check out what they're currently working on and how to contact them. Make sure to sign up for the newsletters. All right, Melony, we'll have you start things off. Quickly, if you can tell us a little bit more about your writing background.
I'd love to. I'm so excited to be part of this panel. I have to tell you, I love these ladies. Getting to know you as well, Rivy. So I'm excited to be here and share what we're going to talk about today. A little bit of my background is I am an educator by trade. I taught special education in public school and then in private school. And you mentioned about my neurological struggles and my brain surgery. I did quite well after my brain surgery, thought I could continue teaching, except neurological fatigue hit with a vengeance. And basically, I couldn't teach full time. The school I was working at, they were gracious. They tried and tried to work with me, and it just didn't work out. So I have been academic tutoring since then, but that has been wonderful because it has allowed me to continue working on my writing and speaking and podcasting.
That's amazing. Cynthia, how about you?
Well, I started off life as a registered nurse, and then I had 5 kids and discovered I could not do that and be a nurse at the same time because nursing hours are pretty hard. So I decided to stay home with my kids and I homeschooled them. And we wanted to see how it went every year. So we just kind of went year by year until we discovered the kids were doing great. And my 5th one was disabled, very disabled. So my last one, I studied special education. And then as my kids began to leave home, I had so much time that I began to do a little writing. And history in particular had encouraged me when I was dealing with Caleb. So I began to write history stuff and I'm still doing it.
That's amazing. Terri, you're next.
Well, I started writing when my grandmother set me on a cold metal stool in front of a Royal typewriter. And I think I was 6. And she said, write. She was a storyteller. She was my best friend. And I really learned that I process things when I write. So I started journaling and I wrote my first story, which was about 2 mice that were accepted on Noah's Ark. And nothing ever happened with that. It's still sitting in a drawer somewhere. But my first traditionally published book was nonfiction. It was a women's devotional, and that came out 15 years ago, and it's still selling. So very happy about that. Right now, I'm working with Cynthia. She and I are working on the 2nd book in the Penny series, and I've just really admired her tenacity in research, and I'm starting to understand why she's so attracted to history, because it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. So I've really enjoyed working with her. And that's it for right now.
Great. Well, would you consider yourself indie or hybrid, Cynthia?
I have done some indie. My first book was indie and completely. And then after that, I got accepted by a small press. So I think the small press considers itself kind of indie because it's so small. But yeah, I've done stuff for a homeschool magazine, a curriculum that's on that. So I sort of am half and half.
That's great. Melony, what about you?
I definitely am an indie author. I have pursued traditional publishing, but my book, the 2 that I have published, they don't really fit in a box, and they're very different. They're interactive. There are visual images in there. I want the reader to color. It's got questions to answer. It just doesn't fit in the box, and so I didn't have much luck of finding a traditional publisher. I was offered a contract by a small traditional publisher, but by that point, I think I had just said, I think it's going to be a better fit for me to just do this independently.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it seems that when it's not a standard book or it doesn't fit into a particular genre, then it would be a lot easier. Well, maybe not easier, but
no, not easy.
Yeah,
A lot of work involved.
Easy is the wrong word to use.
No, and I will say that I wish that someone had said kind of early on, we love what you're doing, but you're not going to find a traditional publisher. You might want to consider some other alternatives. and here are some alternatives, because I've spun my wheels for 10 years or so trying to find a traditional publisher. And I think I could have had better use of that time to go ahead and do the indie publishing then, and then I would be a little further down the road. But God had reason for all of the different things that happen along my writing journey. So I'm not like angry or upset or anything. I'm just saying, perhaps if someone had said something, I think it would have been less frustration on my part.
Yeah. The timing. Terri, did you have something to add?
Yeah. Melony, 10 years ago, indie publishing was not the way that it is today. Today it's much more acceptable. I know with my trilogy, my Hair Mavens trilogy, which is fiction, which is even worse at the time that I self-published, it was, self-publishing fiction was a kiss of death. Nonfiction, if you have a platform like you do with your podcasts. When did you start your podcast?
Started my podcast about 5 years ago. It's almost 6 at this point. And I went home with fear and trembling and didn't think I was going to do it. Now, as I approach season 6 and 90 episodes, I have to say that the podcast is probably my favorite thing to do. I absolutely love interacting with other people, which is what we're doing right now. I love that.
Yeah. And that is the perfect platform for you for a nonfiction book. And I don't think traditional publishing would ever have filled that role quite like what you're doing right now. It's just like the perfect marriage of podcasts and your beautiful book.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that they suggested that. I'm glad my husband looked at me and said, "Yeah, baby, we're doing this." Because I drove all the way home from Blue Ridge going, "God, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. Like, this is so outside my comfort zone." And his support and his time that he spent helping me research and all of that paid off. God knew what he was doing.
Amen.
Yeah, because I even remember a friend of mine, I was streaming on Twitch at the time, and this was probably about 6 years ago as well. And he said he was starting a podcast, and I was like, "What's a podcast?" And now I have Spotify and I listen to all kinds of podcasts. So that's pretty cool that you got in at that time, which is a good timing.
Well,
So.
Cynthia, you have your podcast too.
Yeah, I had mine for about 10 years. And I started it as just a once a month thing for writers and kind of got my feet wet. And then I got asked to do something more and I started streaming once a week. So I've been doing it for a while now. And it's really helped me to be able to interact with people, because I've always thought of myself as shy. But when you start asking people questions, they open up and they think you're a wonderful person. So it's a great thing, I could just say, "Well, what are you here for? Or what are you doing?" Or, "Oh, that's so interesting." And they're off. And I just sit there and go, "Really?"
And then you can just let them do all the talking.
Exactly. And they have no idea I'm not talking.
That's amazing. Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the publishing process. So, Cynthia, what platforms, if any, do you use for creating or formatting or producing your books, like Vellum or Scrivener or anything like that?
I've used Scrivener, but I kind of quit after a while. I usually just use Word, and then I've got an editing program, Grammarly, and it kind of catches things as I go. But I don't really use a whole lot. Now, with my podcast, I use Cast Magic because that helps me make a transcript, which is a lot easier than me doing it myself. But for ads and things like that, I use BookBrush and Canva. really, really love them both. So
Yeah, we've been hearing some not so great things about Scrivener. So, what
Yeah.
about you, Melanie?
Well, as far as the book publishing and doing the indie publishing, I write it, and then I have found other people who are very talented in their specific areas. And so I hire a book cover designer. I will say I found a book cover designer on my first book, paid everything up front, the fee up front. And then when she sent me her design and I made some comments about, could you do this? Could you do that? Tweak it kind of thing. She was not very agreeable and not very happy. And therefore I wasn't very happy because I didn't like what she had. And so I ended up parting ways with her and found a different one whom I absolutely love. But to me, it's very important to know where your strengths are. And while I love my Adobe Illustrator as opposed to Canva, make some great promos and such, I'm not a book cover designer. And I know that people judge a book by its cover, whether we like to admit it or not. They do. I do. If I go to the library to check out a book and I'm going through the books and trying to decide which ones I want to take home with me, I look at the cover and then I flip it over on the back. I do what every other person does. So the book cover is very important. I have an interior designer because I want to make sure that it looks like a professionally laid out book. I also have a professional editor, and the only part that I do in that process is when she sends the edits back and the suggestions back, then of course I make those. And then I've paid a proofreader. And so I don't really, in the actual publishing part, besides the writing, I try to make sure that I farm that out to people who I feel like are going to present that message well.
That makes a lot of sense. What about you, Terry? What kind of platforms do you use when you're creating?
Well, Word. I still
Seems to be very common.
Yeah, I took a 2-hour class in Scrivener and it just made me decide I never want to use it. So, and then I also use Excel for plotting. And then because I am a tactile and visual learner, I always put together like my little
Vision board.
character. Yeah, with my characters, and that way I know their names, I know how old they are, I know the color of their eyes, their hair, and everything else. So and then this is for a penny saved. So, and there's my grandson who was the model for
Mason.
Mason.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then for memes and things like that, I use BookBrush and a Dazing, and Rivy does a lot as my virtual assistant. She does a lot of my graphic design. She's incredible at that. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Well, we were going to ask if anyone hires out parts of the publishing process, like proofreading and book covers and things of that nature. And I know Melony touched on that a bit. Do you hire out, Cynthia, for those kind of things, or?
I usually have an editor read my stuff before I send it in. And then, of course, the press will edit it as well. But I make sure that it's really clean before I send it in. So
That's good. What about you, Terry?
For Sweet Rivalry, I did pay a professional editor who used to do editing for I think Zondervan, and she was also an editor for Tyndale. So I did it mostly as because she knew how to edit for publishing. and which is a different type of editing. So and plus she beat me raw with the things that I needed to learn. So it was an expensive and good experience. So with a penny saved, Cynthia and I, we were pretty thorough, and so we had a couple of, the editor came back with a couple of things, and it was pretty much good to go. But we did decide that we wanted a cover designer. And so we did hire somebody to do the cover because we had a very specific look in mind. And so like Melony said, you do judge a book by its cover. So, and I think Courtney did a great job on our cover. So
Yeah, I do love the cartoon style that was done on there. That was very, very cool. Do you have a budget set up for the hired out costs, Terry?
No, I should, because I'm a very much a budget person, but it's like I don't want to know. I don't want to know how much it costs. It's just like it happens, and so I write out the check. In the first panel team, I liked what one of the authors said. He said, I consider it an investment. It's not so much about how I budget. It's really, I just consider it a part of the process. So I decided to accept that philosophy.
Cynthia, what about you? Do you have a budget set up for these kinds of costs, or?
That's one thing. As far as the editor is concerned, I consider that to be one of the most important things that you do, because if your writing is not good, it's not going to go anywhere. People will put that book down and say, I don't care. So I have an editor that I use, and I pay her, and I just calculate how much it's going to be and stuff it and pay it. So, but the other things I try, in other areas, I try to be reasonable so that I can afford that, because there's some things that just are more important than others.
Yeah, definitely. Melony, what about you? Do you have a budget set up, or?
I would like to say, since my husband is a finance major and has done mortgages our entire marriage, I should be saying yes. But like the others have already said, it is an investment, and I am the kind of person that I take care and give my best to everything. And that includes writing. As Cynthia said, if you don't put a good quality product out there, it's going to go nowhere, and it's not going to help people, which is what I want my books to do, is to equip and empower them to fight to overcome. And if they're stumbling over very poorly written sentences, or the cover doesn't capture them, or that kind of thing, then I'm missing helping those people. And so again, it is an investment. Do I have a budget? I guess on the second one I did, because I knew how much I had spent on the first one, and I felt like it was a good investment. I felt like the money that I invested in getting that book ready to publish was worth every penny. Am I going to make it back? I sure hope so, because it wasn't outrageous. I feel like it's also important to put budget money into promoting it, and not like in a sleazy kind of pushy way, but I have spent money on certain things that I feel like help get the message out there. For example, I had some bubble wrap envelopes made that have the message and theme of my book, and I've already had several people that have received books in those bubble mailers that have just commented on them. But my point is, how many people are seeing that?
Just going through the mail.
In the process of getting mailed. And so to me, I feel like promoting to them is equally as important as the people who are purchasing the books. So I put money into marketing as well.
Yeah, that's great. I would have never even thought of something like that. So you're giving people some tips and they're like, oh, there's so many things. Have you found any ways to maybe cut the costs, or if you have any tips you want to share that could maybe save people some money? Melony, we'll keep going with you.
I use Vistaprint. I had Vistaprint do bookmarks and postcards and various things. I wait until they have a promo, or my husband, who is in a band, and he gets all kind of things printed from Vistaprint. When his order comes in, there's always a coupon for $25 off or something like that. I'm like, I need that. And that way I'm saving on the promotion. I have a company that I use TeePublic to make promotional t-shirt designs. And that way I don't have to keep an inventory. In years past, I would get t-shirts made and you would have to get at least 12 printed. And if you don't sell them, then you're stuck with it and you don't recoup that money. But with TeePublic, I can put it on my website, send them there. They can pick the design they want. They can pick the color they want. They can pick whether it's long sleeve, short sleeve, tank top, whatever their size is. And I just get a little notice, hey, somebody purchased one of your designs. And I make a tiny bit of money, and that's not really why I do it. But that keeps me from having to have inventory that I don't know if I will recoup or not.
That's true. So that definitely does save money in the long run. So what about you, Cynthia? Do you have any tips or maybe ways that people could save a little bit of money during the process?
Well, I do have a lady who does my publishing for me, or my printing. She will make me a design, and then her husband is in the printing industry, and they usually give me a huge discount, 2 for the price of 1 or something. So I usually do real well, and it's very pretty. And then I find people who need money, and I'll ask them to do stuff, and they'll work for what I can pay them, and I help them out, and they help me out. So that's kind of one way I do it.
That's great. So you're helping, but you're also getting, that is very clever. I appreciate that tip there. Mom, what about you?
Like Melony, I use Vistaprint. And when I get the emails that say 40% off, I'm on there stocking up with Bookmarks, and I do a lot of postcard size rather than the bookmark. I have bookmarks for the trilogy, and then I mean, once you start publishing more books, you need bigger space and people will actually use the smaller postcard size as bookmarks as well. So anytime I sell a book, all of that stuff goes in there. So yeah, so
kind of toss it in between the pages.
Yeah. So Vistaprint, especially when they have the 40% off, and the 25% off is only if you spend $100. So I always like to wait for that 40% off. But we got a good deal on the our banner from Vistaprint. Cynthia and I had a banner done, and Melony, I love the idea of the T-shirt. I think that would be great, Cynthia, for us to have.
Well, actually, I had someone take Penny and put balloons with her so that we can do a T-shirt and we could put it on our website so they could go right to it. So that's one thing we could do in the future going forward. So
that's great.
Definitely, the idea is definitely there. I just didn't get it finished. So we're still writing, so we can still do it.
Yeah, that's great. I know of a few other T-shirt companies that are doing that now. I think Sticker Mule is another one. Designed by Humans. When I streamed, I used to use that. And they would they'd have all the different types of shirts. They'd put them on mugs and they'd make stickers, like it was all kinds of things.
See, we're going to be famous, so we can just do that, Terry. We need to have Indy put on all kinds of mugs and cups. And
I think we'll start with Terri next. Has indie and hybrid publishing helped to meet your writing goals? And in what way have they met those goals, or maybe not?
I think we should probably define a hybrid, because I think we all know what indie is. Indie is
Please.
where is everything like Melony. That's pure indie. And hybrid is, I think it's kind of like our publisher, Cynthia, is that it's royalty based. They pay for the print costs and the editing, sometimes, and cover design, although we chose to go outside for that. But they really don't have marketing. And it's more like being indie when we do the marketing. So, and getting into brick and mortar bookstores is, it just, they're not able really to do that anymore, at least now. But so that is hybrid. As an answer to your question, when I decided to try to get a traditional publisher to publish my Hair Mavens series, even though I had the acquisition editors I would get the personal notes. It said, great writing, great story, not for us. And it turned out that it just didn't fit what they felt their market could bear. So so for me, it was, I had no other option. And doing fiction by indie is, like I said, it's sometimes considered the kiss of death. Fortunately, over the years, that's not the case. So I went ahead and self-published all 3 of the novels, and the first novel won an award for Best Women's Contemporary, and the last book also won an award for Best Contemporary. So, you can still have some sense of accomplishment that you didn't fail or rejected because, I guess, what it is? It's kind of like the validation that if a traditional publisher says, oh, yes, we want your book, it feels like that kind of validation. And yes, exactly. And so, but it doesn't have the same stigma that it did, 10 years ago. So, so did it meet my goals? Yes. And I'm very grateful that that people are still buying it after so many years. So, yeah.
Well, it's a good book.
Thank you.
Melony, what about you? Has Indian hybrid publishing helped to meet your writing goals?
I would say absolutely yes. It's not that I had to have a book published to feel like I had made it or anything like that. I had just, I guess my goal in all of the writing was to help women who are struggling. There are women out there that face challenges and they don't know what to do. They get stuck. They feel very overwhelmed. They don't know how to fight to overcome. And through the interviews that I've had on my podcast, and even before my podcast, I had interviewed women who are overcomers and I had written their stories. So between my written stories of overcomer interviews and the ones on the podcast, there's about 150 of them. And throughout the 10 years, the 5 that I wrote them, and then the 5, now 6 that I'm about to start with the podcast, I have had comments back about how this has helped them, has equipped them, has helped them to see things that maybe they had never considered, that motivated them to say, you know, this diagnosis is awful, or I didn't want a divorce, or whatever it was. And I wanted to get that out in a different format than the podcast, because not everybody likes to listen to podcasts. And so I knew that the writing the books would help achieve that. So for me, it's been great because it has reached people that didn't even know about my ministry or about the podcast. And I've heard success stories, including my neighbor who is Indian, and she read the book and she said, I read it before bed every night. And I'm thinking, it has God on almost every page. And how is this even possible? And so absolutely, this has achieved the goals that I had, the desire to help people. I'm a helper. I mean, I'm a special ed teacher, you know, like that's just who I am. And so I am so thrilled to know that it is reaching people who are struggling and need that encouragement and need those reminders, or a way to look at a situation and consider it differently than what their experiences are. So I've absolutely enjoyed the process. Now, I will say indie publishing is a lot of tough work. It is very demanding. Some of those days I went to my bedroom and shut the door and just had a little, not a hissy fit like I'm mad, but like a crying fit, like, oh my gosh, this is so overwhelming. But it's been wonderful, and I'm just thrilled with what God is doing through those 2 books. Just thrilled.
That's amazing. It seems like indie hybrid is while it's a lot more difficult and you have to take on some more of the burden, it seems like it's better for getting your true work out there and for people to see it. So Cynthia, how has indie or hybrid publishing helped to meet your writing goals?
Well, as I have observed people that are in some of the bigger presses, they work, but they work in a different way, and they spend hours and hours and hours on proposals and things like that, and then they have to shop the presses. So the fact that, you know, we're kind of indie and small press, that kind of cuts a little bit of that out, and we can put our effort other places. And yes, I've met my publishing goals. I'm very pleased with where I am. So, and continuing to write. So yeah, and I'm with Terri because we've done a little bit of both and done some together too. So yeah, it does.
Yay. All right. Well, the next question is for those who have published traditionally. So who's published traditionally? Oh, Mom. Oh, both. All right. Whoever would, Cynthia, if you want to go first.
Well, I think having a press take your book is kind of an endorsement, so to speak, that I'm behind you. I believe in you. I publish you because I like you. And that's really comforting, especially if you're just starting out in it and you don't really know the industry. That's kind of nice. I feel like that the press is behind me. So that's helpful. Like I say, like Terri said, we don't get a lot of publicity. We sort of do it all ourselves, but most writers do most of it themselves anyway. I mean, that's the way it is. They can't afford it. And so you have to do it. You have to be out there doing stuff.
That's true. Terri, what about you? What's your traditional publishing experience?
Well, my traditional publishing experience, because of the particular, even though it was a small house, it was a niche company, a niche house. It was a Messianic Jewish publisher. So they knew how to market for that demographic. So, which is why my book is still in their catalog, because they know how. I was their very first women's devotional. So, so that afforded me a lot of support in marketing and publicity and things like that. Plus, my publisher always sent representatives to conferences and to the international, when they had the international Christian retailers show. So they were there. So my book went everywhere, and I didn't have to pay for that. That was in fact, they paid for when I went with them one time, they paid for my trip as well. So, so that was a nice situation, and more like the bigger traditional publishers would do, like Tyndale, Thomas Nelson, Zondervan, and Baker Book Group. Yeah.
Well, you kind of, it's almost like you blazed the trail, since you were the first in that kind of category. So that was really cool.
It was fun. One catalog, it says our top selling women's devotional, and it was like, yeah, I'm the only one. So,
well, that helps.
But I still framed it. So, but yeah, so that was really an honor, and that was totally a divine God thing, because I had the idea. It was a topic at a women's retreat that I spoke on, and then it just kept stewing, and people just kept coming up years afterwards saying how much that message meant to them. And so I thought, well, I wonder if I could do a women's devotional on that. And so, I did as I said in the previous panel, I did the proposal. They went through the publishing board. They notified me in December and said, can you have the first draft in 60 days? And I was working full time at the time. So, but God was so good. I had 6 devotions that I did for the proposal and an outline, and that was it. And so I think there were 52 devotions plus intros for each week. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Are there any other advantages that you can think of with traditional publishing versus indie or hybrid? Cynthia, we can go with you if you like.
Well, even with traditional publishing, unless you are like one of the top authors, they do give you a certain amount of promotion, but you still do most of it. So besides maybe having the name behind you, I don't think there's that much advantage. And it's so hard to get one of those big top ones. So I'm happy where I am.
Yeah, I think just kind of pivoting off of that, I have a lot of friends who are with the big publishers, and I can say that generally speaking, they will. Well, and plus they're like really good writers, but they will usually sell out their advance and still, and then begin accruing royalty as well. So, and it's like what Cynthia said, that if you're on the top tier of their authors, they will invest a lot. My friend Kathy, She hates social media. She doesn't do social media. She barely does a newsletter. All the things that they tell you to do to promote, she doesn't do them, and yet she's a bestseller. So, so it just really depends. So our happy little small press is where they say, "What are you going to write next?" That's nice.
Yeah. So it's almost the main the main advantage, it almost seems like, is just having a big name attached to your book. Yeah. Melony, please.
I want to say one of the things that I know about my friends who are with traditional publishers that to me is a big disadvantage is the length of time that it takes to get a book from being accepted to being on a shelf. It could be 12 to 24 months. Most of the time here lately, it's they keep getting it pushed and pushed and pushed. And when I came home from the writers conference after meeting Susan Neal, who is the director of the Christian Independent Publisher Association, and she sold me on the idea of self-publishing. I came home, that was April. By September, I had Challenges Won't Stop Me published. Now, a lot of the background stuff, I had already had it edited. It had already, of course, been written. I had to find a book cover designer and a book interior designer. But I was able to put it out in 5 months. And some people might think, well, you kind of rushed it, and did you really do a quality job? Yeah, I did. And that's why I paid the people that I paid, because I wanted to make sure that after everything that I had done to do my very best, that then there were other people. And I think God really opened the door and had their schedules available, which was wonderful. And it just all fell into place. I knew that I wanted the second one to come out relatively about a year later. And I was able to do that. And so I think that the time factor, and again, what your publishing goals are. Do you want to get these out in a certain time period, or when like I tutor as well. So my summers, I like book it because that's when I don't have students. And so I can tailor make when I publish my books based on when I have the most available amount of time. I don't think you really get that opportunity with a traditional publisher. You're on their time schedule, and that includes how long it takes. And so I think, to me, that has been a huge benefit to doing indie publishing.
Yeah, it seems like you have a bit more freedom when it comes to kind of stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think we'll throw it over to Cynthia. What has been the biggest surprise for you in your writing journey? Was it challenging or rewarding, or both?
Well, I think there's a little bit of both in there. It's pushed me to do things I thought I would never do. You know, I've ended up making films. I've ended up coming on the YouTube channel, on the podcast. I've ended up doing things I never dreamed because I needed to be able to be someone who is out there giving. And I've always wanted to be someone who is giving, who's helping people, who's offering, who's ministering. And this gives me an opportunity. It is a lot more work than I expected. I don't know what I guess I thought I would write a book and throw it out the window and somebody would come buy it. You know, I don't know. You get that feeling that it's that easy, but it's really not. So it's a challenge, but it's made me grow as a person a lot.
That's great. It's kind of like you think it's, if you build it, they will come kind of situation.
People do actually say that if you write a good book, people are going to read it. Well, yeah, if they hear of it, you know, but you got to be out there doing stuff to get people's attention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Melony, what about you?
I definitely echo what Cynthia said. It's been hugely fulfilling, but very challenging. There have been times when I just really wanted to quit. And God's like, no, young lady, you got things to do, and I've been pouring into you so that you can pour into other people. And I am all about being obedient as best I can. And there have been plenty of things. We already talked about my podcast, and I came home feeling like I don't think I can do this. And he has taught me and put me in touch with people who have poured into me and helped me to grow in different areas. And in fact, I'm really wanting to do less of tutoring so that I can have more room for writing and speaking and podcasting, because I feel like that's, at this point in my life, that's where I want to put my energies and time.
And it's a great way of getting everything out there, of what you want to tell people out there. The podcast is extremely, great way. So yeah. And challenges, and I presented challenges like it was a negative thing, but it's not always a negative thing. It can be a building and a way to make you grow also and learn. So
you're speaking my language.
Challenges, yeah, challenges are good.
Yes, they
Terri,
are.
Mm-hmm. Terri, what about you?
As everyone has said, I think it's both. And with moving from Philadelphia area down to the deep South, that was because I had my circuit of speaking and all my little bookstores that I would always go to. And so I had to start all over again. But in that process, I met Cynthia, and I met Debbie, and I met some other people that have really poured into my life as well. And when Cynthia said, hey, I really want somebody to go with me to these events, I was like, really? Me? And so that has been an incredible blessing. And I never thought I would be selling books at a homeschool conventions, but it's been such a blessing to meet kids who love to read, and their favorite genre is fantasy and or his history, which has been incredible. So very grateful.
Well, sorry. I have you do have some experience a little bit in homeschool. She homeschooled me, I think, when I was 16 years old, 15 something.
Yeah, I think
around there.
It was your sophomore year. It was like because Bernice Warren said, give her a break, let her detox for a year. And so your junior year, you were able to, by the time you finished junior year, you were able to take your GED.
Yeah. So
you actually just really thrived in a homeschool environment.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely a change from public school. And I will never regret experiencing public school, because that is an experience I think every kid should have, honestly. But also the experience of homeschool is a lot more personal, and especially if it's your parents doing it, you feel a lot more connected with it. So I'm amazed. You've all shared so much insight behind the scenes, but sadly, we got to wrap it up. So authors, in a few words, please share any advice to those starting or considering their own writing journey. And whoever would like to go is fine by me, or I can pick. All right, Cynthia, we'll start with you.
Realize that this is not an easy thing. I mean, God may call you to do it, but you're going to write and rewrite, and you're going to do a lot of publicity. And, just getting your book out there or getting out what you need to say is going to take time and effort. And that, I think that was the bigger surprise to me. But God can use people in different ways. And, there was Elijah that did big things. And then there was Elisha who did smaller things. Both of them were miracles, but some of them were small versus big. Like there was Mount Carmel, and there was Mount Elisha who helped to make an axe head float. I mean, it wasn't nearly as big. So I think God has both kinds of people out there on purpose because people need different things. So be aware that you may not be a big star. You may be a small star, but we need both kinds. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Melony, what about you?
I think it's so incredibly important to remember that the writing journey is not a sprint. It is a marathon times 10. And it can get very disheartening because you feel like you're not making progress, or you're not being noticed, or you're not getting an agent, or you're not getting this, or you feel like doors are being slammed in your face. That's hard. I mean, it's been hard on me, and it's been very discouraging at times. And so it's so important to have other writer friends. I cannot even begin to tell you how many times I have reached out to a writer friend, or writer friend has reached out to me, and we encourage each other because, as Cynthia said, it's not about trying to be the next big author. If that happens, that is amazingly wonderful. But staying in it because God, if you feel like God has called you to it, being obedient to it, because it is about getting the book out there, but it's also about what you learn along that long 26 miles times 10. Because I have not only grown in different areas of writing, speaking, and podcasting, but in my own personal life, and know that part of what you're writing about is your own experiences. And so there have been times where I've questioned why God says, I want you to write about overcoming, because it's not that I just had this health issue and brain surgery and that's it. And thank you, you're great to go. And let's just keep writing about that. No, I keep seeming to have lots and lots of challenges to overcome, because apparently there's a lot more for me to learn so that I can then share it. So it is definitely not a sprint. There are a very few authors who go out there and get published immediately, but that's rare. It is truly a marathon, and you have to do it because you love it and because you want that message, whatever that message is, whether it's a novel or a nonfiction or a memoir, whatever it is, that you feel like that message needs to be shared. So be in it for the long haul, and you will see God show up. You will meet incredible people along the way too. So I think for young authors, you are on an incredible journey, but no, as Cynthia said, it's hard at times, and just keep plugging along and don't give up.
That is very good advice. Terri, will you share with us any advice you have for someone considering their writing journey?
Just kind of piggybacking off of both Cynthia and Melony, and that is to have a support group. If you write fiction, the American Christian fiction writers, they have the national organization where you can do a lot of online classes and critique groups, and then they have chapters that are smaller that you can commiserate and learn from one another. So, and also Melony mentioned young writers, but I just want to encourage you that you can start writing at any age, and you would be surprised the number of people who start writing. It's always been percolating in their mind, and talking to those characters and things like that, and maybe for decades. But I know a lot of 40 and 50-year-olds who begin writing, and I don't know, it just, I know young people love writing speculative fiction, which is science fiction and fantasy, and but I think older writers, we have a lot of life experience, as Melony has said, and that is what colors and brings depth and realism to our fictional characters. So just encourage all ages. If God has called you, he'll make a way. Still, it's going to be hard work, but yeah.
But don't give up.
Don't give up. Never give up. Never surrender.
And if you're thinking about doing it, just do it. Just start writing. I wrote some things. I have notebooks everywhere. So sometimes I just feel like writing, and it's not even to create a book per se. It's just start writing and just get things to where you see them on the page, and then who knows what can happen from there.
Well,
So.
I can brag because I'm her mom, but Rivy has written some beautiful poetry and lyrics as well. So, and that is just as much, writing as anything else. So
I like rhyming. It's fun. It's fun but it's hard too, because you're coming up with the structure of the story, but then you have to make it rhyme and you have to make it make sense. So yeah, maybe I'll share my the man with the fish story someday. So who knows? Hey viewers, our panelists have provided some items for giveaway just for you. If you subscribe, like, comment, or share, you'll be entered for a chance to win. Cynthia will provide either a paperback book or Kindle of Reflecting Gold, one of her books in the Gold series. Melony has provided us a copy of Challenges Won't Stop Me, an interactive survival guide for overcoming and thriving. And Terri has offered either a paperback, there it is, paperback or Kindle version of the first book in her Hair Mavens trilogy, the award-winning She Does Good Hair. Huge thanks to our authors, Melony, Cynthia, and Terri, for sharing with us your insight and knowledge. We truly appreciate everything, all of your wisdom and tips, and just general knowledge and sharing with everybody. Viewers, we hope that this was helpful for you as well, and let us know in the comments section if you found something that really helped and maybe is a game changer for you, and maybe you have some tips as well that we don't know about and you can share with us. So please feel free to do that. All right. Again, if you haven't watched episode 1 of the Indie Hybrid Author Panel, make sure to check that out. It's linked in the description below. Okay. And Mom, we'll leave it up to you to cap us out.
Well, I just wanted to thank, first of all, panel number 1. Appreciate the time that you gave us, and Melony and Cynthia. It was such a blessing and such a treat. You have so much to give to authors. I learned so much today as well. So we're always learning, and very grateful for the time that you gave us. This is my 3rd anniversary on my YouTube channel, and I really wanted to do something for writers and those who really desire to be published. And I think these wonderful guests have done a great job in sharing that for you. So thank you so much, and a special thanks to our moderator, Rivy. And I'm not being biased at all, even though I'm her mom, but I think she's absolutely amazing, and I appreciate her stepping out and and doing this, and it was out of her comfort zone. So I truly appreciate that. So thank you so much, everyone, for stopping by. Until next time, God bless, and keep reading.